So what I wanted to talk about today is a question that we all deal with, or at least some of us deal with, is why do we die? Why do we die? So if we're going to look at this from a scientific point of view, and again, I am not claiming to be a scientist, I am not a biologist, extremely novice. So if we're going to look at this way, most of the body cells know how to renew, to rejuvenate, to multiply, and so on and so forth by splitting. They divide and then they split, right? And by doing so, they, how should I say it? Copy themselves, right? And by doing so, they fix damages and so on. However, you should know that every time a cell splits or divides, there is a small wear and tear of the DNA. A little bit gets worn off, especially the edges of the DNA. And in the area that it's called a telomere or telomere. Yeah, something like that. Telomere or something of that sort. And in a way, they operate like corks. Those telomeres, they operate like corks at the edge of the chromosomes. And their job is to really protect the genetic information that it's there. However, every time a cell splits, the telomere becomes shorter. And when it gets a certain critical length, the cell loses its ability to divide and to multiply. And this is the stage when it goes when it enters a state that it called senescence, and which is basically getting the cells older. Yeah, that's what happens to us when we get older. So, and in addition to that, in the cells there are oxidation that it happens, and that creates damage as well. That's why we need to take antioxidants, right? Because it's like, call it cell rust, right? So that becomes a problem. And there are toxins inside the cells, and there are sometimes errors in duplicating the DNA throughout the years. And slowly, the system that we have in place is supposed to fix those damages becomes weaker. And since they become weaker and they're worn out, so the tissue, whatever it is in the body, loses its vitality, and that's how we get old. That's what happens when we get old. And what happens when a person gets old, the rejuvenation process slows down and then becomes weaker to the point that it stops, and then, goodbye and good luck. So science revealed to us that death starts from the smallest parts. From a cell, from inside the cells themselves. And every cell in our body, in a way, functions almost like a small universe that holds within itself the secret of creation, also known as the DNA. And the DNA is basically the library of life. It's the library of life. All the code of life and everything that we have is held within our DNA. Somebody wants some pizza? All right. But every time the cell splits, as we call them, the telomeres, the edge of the chromosome becomes shorter and shorter, and until the telomere gets completely erased and overused, the cell loses ability and kind of forgets how to do its job. So this moment of biological forgetfulness, call it this way, the cell forgets how to renew, and then we become old, and tissues and other things like this become weaker, and they rejuvenate much slower. And in a way, science sees death as a cumulative wear and tear, if for lack of better words, so cumulative wear and tear. However, there are scientists that see the process of death also a planned program. In other words, it's within the program to do it. And somebody asked me, how is it that, back in the day, the Torah tells us that people live 1,000 years and today people don't make it? It's very simple. If you look at refrigerators, or you look at cars that were made in the 1940s, in the 50s, they still drive. And there's no rust. Today, the cars are meant to break. You take a refrigerator that was made, 50 years ago, it still works. You buy a refrigerator today, a year later, it breaks down. It's programmed to break down. So some scientists see death as a program, or a default within the program for us to basically to come to an end. Otherwise, we'll live forever. So some of this process of a greater process of the cycle of life, right, is needed. Why? Because the body needs to make room for new life. Because if we're not going to die, we're going to get overpopulated within a few years. So that's usually what happens. New experiments and so on. So that's a part of the experience, I guess, of creations. So biological death, in terms of that, is the moment that the process of rejuvenation is not able to overcome another process, right? And that process of breaking down. So cells always break down, but the process of rejuvenation overcomes it. That's what we continue doing. But when the process of breaking down is greater than rejuvenation, we die. That's basically what happens. However, if we're going to look at things from a Kabbalistic spiritual point of view, right? The Kabbalah sees life as a constant movement of God's light into you and out of you and so on and so forth. Every cell in that matter, according to Kabbalah, the way Kabbalah sees this, is an apparatus, is a vehicle, is an instrument that holds this light inside. Every breath you take, right, is a new abundance that enters the world. I mean, if you see it, argument's sake, if you're talking about Chinese medicine, they put great emphasis on maintaining the balance and breathing exercises. We think exercise is just about going to the gym and lifting weights and so on and so forth. We don't pay attention to the breathing exercise. We don't do breathing exercises, right? In Chinese martial arts or Chinese way, breathing exercise is more important than lifting weights. More important than lifting weights, because that's how you bring the shefa into you. Their goal is not to waste this energy, to keep this energy inside. And to that matter, you see certain similarities between the concept of medicine that the Rambam Maimonides practice to Chinese medicine. Whether it's when they write that the zera is koach hachayim, right? Both cultures saw it as don't overuse it because there's a certain vitality that you lose. So that's how we look at things from the Kabbalistic point of view, right? When a person, for example, lives his life with emunah, in other words, emunah in this case would be a certain form of a meaning. Come closer. Certain form of a meaning. He lives life with joy, with simcha. He lives life with love and a good intent. He I hate to say it, but he's a positive person, not a negative. I don't want to sound new age and, mindful that I don't want to talk about this now. But I'm talking about staying a positive person, right? His vessels are always, the Kabbalah says, his vessels are open, constantly open to receive that light, the vitality of life that comes through this world. He stays young. But when a person falls into a state of yeush, he's depressed, he's giving up, he can't do it, or state of fear, or guilt, or hatred, there is a tzimtzum, internal tzimtzum, condensation. There is a traffic jam that prevents the light to come into you. That's why the Torah, with all its commandments and so on and so forth, does not command us to hate anyone, even our enemies. Because that, when you put hatred into you, right? If you put hatred into you, what happens? You are basically closing the light into you. You stretching yourself. It's not good. It's very simple. Now, when you hate your brother, not only you are restricting the light into you, you're also restricting the light into him. And now that's double damage. So that's how we do it. Then the light becomes weaker and so on and so forth. And then we start to, and I mean, you know it. We all know it, right? When a person lives in this kind of life, he has the magic word that we'd say in today is called, it starts with an S, and it's called stress. And stress kills you. Stress kills you. No meaning kills you. Fear, hatred, all these things, that kills you. Well, how does it kill me? It prevents me from receiving the light. So what happens is, the Zohar says, when a person forgets his source, to lower his voice. When a person forgets its source, the light disappears. You forget what is it about. You forget where you came from. That's why Rabbi Akavia ben Ma'anael says, Da me'ayin bata ule'ayin ata olech. You always need to remember. What's a me'ayin bata? So there's many interpretations where you came from. But one interpretation is, don't forget your source. Because once you disconnect from your source, you didn't develop individual roots to be able to get it. You cut yourself off. You're disconnected from the source. So what happens is, according to Kabbalah, old age and death is an expression of spiritual forgetfulness. We forgot the source. The cells, which really reflects the awareness of man, forget the format, the whole format of the initial perfection that was brought into them. And the result of that, they become confused. They forget about what we call the divine memory. They forget about even God himself, that is implanted, by the way, in all of us. And that's why they can replicate and duplicate themselves over and over again, and then they die. And we call it in Kabbalah, they call it nefilat madrega. You're falling down a level instead of going up to get more life, and a little more life, right? And we always say you have to live your life kamayana mitgaber, a bubbling brook that only gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That constant flow of and what do we say? Mayan, a brook, right? A spring or bubbling brook purifies better than a mikveh. Because I don't have to have 40 se'ah in one gathered place. Bemashu, I mean anything. As long as your body is covered, it's good. Why? Because it's pure, it's alive, it's keep on going. So that constant motion, what?
It's connected to the source.
It's always connected to the source, you're right. It's connected to the source. Once you connect it from the source, it's going to immediately stop. And it's rejuvenating all the time, and that brings you a source of life. Learn from that. Learn from nature what you need to be. You don't need you just need to open your eyes. I can't hear. So now, when the Kabbalah describes this as life of constant flow of light into us, an endless light within these vessels. A broken vessel, a kli shavur, can only be filled partially. So let's say, for example, I have a vessel that broke this way. I cannot fill up the whole entire vessel. I only fill up a small part of it. But that part is not enough to continue. I'll be here for a while, but it's not enough to continue to duplicate and to multiply and so on and so forth. However, a clear vessel who is purified, mezukak, is purified, has the ability to fill completely. So the ability of you to hold the light inside depends on how much you're actually cleaning your vessel inside. How much you're cleaning your own self inside. And it is an endless job. You can always get to another level, to another level, to another level, to another level. The highest level that a person can reach is the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's called Aspaklara Meria. It was completely clean. Then when God's light came into him, he came out pure as it is without any distortion whatsoever. So therefore it's possible to do so. According to the Zohar, death is not turning off the light, but rather, according to the Zohar, death is the removal of light. When the light could not be maintained in us anymore, and therefore it's out of us. We didn't turn it off. It just went out of us. It's lack of our ability to contain that life inside of us. When a person, of course, loses its connection to his creator, to Hashem, right? To his soul. When a person loses his connection to his vision, the light weakens. You don't understand what I'm saying? You don't agree with me? You don't have to agree with me. But I will tell you the following. Go read Men's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl and go realize what I'm saying. What helped Viktor Frankl survive the camps is his thesis. Yeah, that'll help you also, right? And the cells, which in a way are a reflection of our awareness, start to forget their divine shape and they simply died. Not because they got an expiration date, but because they stopped believing that they are part of a living light, which is the light of a living God. That's the problem. That's why we die. That's why it's so important. How do you connect this? That's why it's very important to come to learn every single day, to perform your duties that you need to pray to God every single day. But when you pray to God every single day, you fill up your jug of chayut, of lifehood, where you're learning to, you remember who you are. But that's what we say, Ta'azvenu yom, yazveka yomayim. You live it one day, he lives you 2 days. All of a sudden, you don't find you don't come to yeshiva one day. All of a sudden, 2 days you're gone, and then 2 days will become 1 week, and then they say, you know what, I'm out of it. I'm kind of lost it. We need to understand that. We need to understand that. We need to understand what it means. The Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordoverio, wrote, "En mita ela asarat hashefa min hakelim." Death is removing the abundance from the vessels. That's why it's dead. So it's also very important, for example, to understand. I mean, when, for example, something breaks in my house, my wife says Mazal Tov. Why? It did its tikkun. It did its tikkun. It broke. It left. That's it. Left the world. That's why if something breaks on Shabbat, it becomes muktzeh. It cannot be a vessel anymore that holds light. Because if I have a vessel, right, a kli, a cup, or something I can do make a bracha with it. There is a purpose. When something breaks, there's no purpose. On Shabbat, it becomes muktzeh. I can't touch it. Excuse me? מה אני יכול לעשות? I know. So now, the Ramak writes, so en mita el asarat hashefa min hakelim, removing the abundance from life, ve'achayim, and life is chazarat hashefa bakli hamezuman lo. Life is bringing back the abundance, the light into whatever vessel that it comes your way. You see it in the story of who was it? Who was with a woman? Elisha. When he went to the woman, right, and they have nothing to eat, he said, bring me all the empty vessel. I'm going to fill them up with oil. That's the whole thing. You need a vessel to hold the light. A broken vessel cannot hold anything. So according to that, death is not destruction of matter, of material, but rather removal of awareness that revives you, that gives you a life. In other words, you can tell death is lack of meaning in life. The bridge between that, between science and so on and so forth, is the awareness could be served as a biological force. In other words, when I have an awareness, when I have a kavanah, when I have a machshava, when I have a meaning, it brings biological life to me. So you take something so esoteric and remove and spiritual as a thought, as meaning, and now you're turning into a force of life. That's why it's important to know what you're doing and why you're doing and how you do it. Today also scientists start to see a direct connection between awareness, between our feelings, and the state or overall state of your body. Right? Yeah. If a person is sick, right? Let's say, for example, nothing is wrong with him, but he became sick. I heard something beautiful. Somebody said that his mother was grieving the death of the father, of the husband. And there was an empty hole in her. She felt there's an empty hole in her soul that the husband, when the husband died, was created. He said that opening, he said, my mother until the point was a happy, healthy woman, never was sick. But once the husband died, he said, once my father died, that hole in her life, it occurred. Through the hole, she got all the diseases in the world that's killed her. Within 6 months, she was dead. Excuse me? That's true love. That goes back to what we said before about spiritual entanglement. So now, so you could see through science, through research and so on and so forth, that certain positive state of awareness could lengthen the telomeres, as we say it, and stress would make them shorter. So a feeling or state of mind actually changes your biological state. That's why I said to you, don't worry about things you don't have control over. Don't worry about it. And if you're worried about it, stop. Do something about it. Give yourself a meeting. Move to another state. Argument. You don't like who's going to be the mayor? No problem. Go move to Montana. Go raise sheep. Right? So on and so forth. Right, Avner? Raise chickens. Move to Great Neck. Raise chickens. I don't know. Whatever you do. Find meaning in something else. Don't. And that's why I keep saying to you all the time. Stop being negative. Being negative and looking at all these bad things that happen in the world will shorten your life. You look at something that is good that happened in the world, you have a good attitude, it would lengthen your life. Even Kohelet said to us, what? It's better to be a living dog than a dead lion. So that's something we need to remember. So, and it's not just stress. Also fear will do it to you. Depression, feeling down, not being happy, would make it shorter. In other words, what the Kabbalah knew already thousands of years ago, that the internal light affects the physical body, the spirit, the spiritual affects the body. Today, you get reassurance by researchers that life is not just a physiological process, but also a matter of attitude to life. How do you look at life? This is what it is. This is what life is all about. Even when if we're going to look at life as a constant gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you, and that's why I keep telling you all the time, you have to always be grateful and you have to acknowledge good what somebody did to you. Somebody opened the door for you, you have to be grateful for that. Needless to say, if somebody picked you up from the garbage instead of leaving in a refrigerator box and makes you to a man. That's why you have to do it. You have to appreciate this. When you have this a constant life, you're able to shine that light and actually externally, but even more so internally into your own cells. You allow the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu come to flow. The Chinese call it Qi, the energy of life. You can't measure. Of course you cannot measure it. Of course you cannot measure, but has an effect on you? Yes, it has an effect on you. So, when we look at the same phenomena from different angles, right? How does life flow stops and so on and so forth, we could learn the art of renewal. That a lot of it has to do with your attitude. Or maybe most of it has to do with your attitude. So if you're going to say, so why do we die? Is because the light inside the vessel becomes weak because the vessel himself started to fall apart. Sometimes from a biological wear and tear, but most of the time is because of spiritual forgetfulness. And as much as the seed needs to do what? The seed needs to germinate, to rot in order for the tree to grow. So is the physical body falls apart in order for the neshama will be able to come up and go up again. Because once the body becomes so falling apart, it cannot contain the neshama with the soul within it. Because the neshama is like a force that's always trying to come back to its source, to its root. And the body gives it the boundaries that the neshama can operate into this world. Because the soul cannot operate in this world without boundaries. It needs those boundaries of this world. That's why if you live life in this world with no boundaries, your life is not life. You're going to be weird. And life is not life. However, when you do it like this, you maintain that balance, you can operate. The body is good, the soul operates. But once the body weakens out, because you don't allow the new light to come in and you don't allow light to flow out, through where? I'm going to tell you through where. Through physics, to the neutrinos that you don't see. In the small particles, in the spaces, you created such murk. So therefore you become a broken vessel. And when the vessel comes out, the stress of the neshama is so great that simply the vessel breaks and the neshama goes out. Zayin gesund, you're dead. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. Chazal says, En mita letzadikim ela shena. Right? Sleeping, right? Death for the righteous people is like sleeping, right? It's not something that we see as an end of a process. When we learn how to die, we're actually going to learn how to live. And you have to remember that. So you want to live long life, you want to live. And life is not necessarily always long years. Yeah. Life is putting every single day meaning into your actions. That's what life is all about. Excuse me?
What's the point of mourning the dead?
So the mourning of the dead body, that's what I told you. I don't think if you were here, I heard an interview by the brother of Emmanuel Moreno. Emmanuel Moreno was probably, as they say at the time, somebody said he was the best Israeli, the Jewish soldiers in the time of Bar Kokhba. And he was a religious guy. He did stuff that until today, after his death, he died, I don't know, whatever, 2006, something like this. You can show his picture. His brother says, the pain is a pain that I lost myself as a person. But as a religious Jew, I understand that my brother fulfilled his mission in this world. He became Shalem. As I wrote to you, Shalem, Shlemut means Shel Mavet, of death. He says, I know that my brother was elevated to a higher level. So I'm happy to him. For myself, I feel sad. But for my brother, I'm happy. It's a totally different way to look at life. When a person dies, what do we say? Hashem natan, Hashem lakach, Yishem Hashem mevarach. God gave, God took, may God's name be blessed. So when you are mourning, really, what is it that you are mourning? Your own self? Or the fact that this person now could have done so much in this world and this potential was taken away to do good in the world? We should look at things a little different. Not everything is gain and loss, like it's not a business. Not everything is a business. Yeah, you can tell this to the president also. Not everything is a business negotiation. There are things that are more important than business. Virtues, principles, values. And we need to remember that. So the Ramak also writes that when the Shefa goes out from the Kilim, it's not really death, but rather going back to the root. Going back to the root because the Neshama has no purpose in this world anymore. So when the vessel is broken, the Neshama goes back to its root. In other words, every death is a return to the light or to the place in which we came from. We need to make sure that we have the return address appropriately. If a person does Avera of Karet, he lost their return address. Now he's going to be in the mail system for I don't know how long. The mitzvot that we do assures us, and the code name that you're going to get on every gate is your name. You have to remember your name. So, if we're going to look at things, right, so life by itself, which is the energy of life, like anything, there's no loss of energy, but rather they change of frequency. Death is a change of frequency. You can also see things from a different angle. Death is not your enemy. Death is not your enemy, but rather a teacher. It teaches you. A person could learn how to live every single day and should live every single day as if this day is your last day. And ask yourself, did you live this life today to its fullest? Did you do anything meaningful today? Was today a good day to die or no? If you think tomorrow is going to be better, I tell you, you wasted today. You wasted a chance to bring light into your life. That's why you got to have a meaning in life that is tangible. Money is no meaning. You're just collecting vessels without taking the lid to fill them up. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu says, guys, you got to give tzedakah. You have to give tzedakah. You have to help people. Take your money and turn it into an instrument of light. Help somebody. You are smart. Share your smartness with somebody. Don't be all for yourself. One of the things that help you close the vessel, to put a lid on your vessel, not to allow the light in, is, you know what? Your telephone. You know why? Because you concentrated on yourself. You're not paying attention to anybody around you. Somebody's talking to you, you're on the phone. Your kid is talking to you on your phone. You lost your kid. Your wife is talking to you, you're on the phone. You lost your wife. Needless to say, that's why you don't have any friends. You're too much on your phone. Get rid of it. Put it to the side. You need a telephone to make a telephone call. You don't live your life to see what's happening on Instagram. Who cares? Who cares? So when you live life like this every single day, as if your last day, you should not live it out of fear, but rather from awareness. I have to be aware. I need to know. And when you learn how to die in every moment, you'll know how to live in every moment. Because you know what brings life, what brings death. And this is the understanding, what we call an empty heart. Empty heart, that you're able to echo the sound of life into you, not filled up with so much noise from the outside, you don't know left from right anymore, up or down. I'm telling you, with the state that we are going now, there's no need to have an extra drink of Purim. We are so confused, we don't know anymore. Baruch Haman ve'aru Mordechai, we don't know anything. We are so confused. Not only confused, we are dazed and confused. No, it's a song. Now, you know who sang it? Who made it famous, should I say? Your homework. I can tell you which albums it was on and which track, because I can speak vinyl, but you don't. Now, yeah, it appeared, yeah, what, I don't want to get into it. Now, when I say empty heart, you have to make sure that that heart that we are talking about, there's no, I mean, it's empty, so there's not going to be any kind of a push against in it. It needs to be smooth, so everything can flow in. Because once you create ridges and resistance inside of it, the flow stops. When people resist the doing of mitzvot, they resist the doing of mitzvot, they can't bring the light of their life. See, that's why you need to have a Kabbalah, an absolute Kabbalah of mitzvot, absolute Kabbalah of tshuva. Not like, listen, Mama, it's okay, I'll do tshuva, but once a year, let me just go Las Vegas. That does not happen. When you marry your wife or your spouse, that has to be empty, completely, with nothing. You let the whole experience fill in. There's no like, maybe there's a way I could do this or I could do that. No! Complete. You have to have a heart to receive any kind of change also as a part of the natural order of the thing. The world always changes. The world is not the same. If you live by the beach, you see every second it changes. Every wave that comes changes the shape of everything. It changes. The wind blows things. So you have to accept changes. So if things change, you need to learn how to move along with them. What do I mean? Well, go teach us to the people in Germany in 1933. Or maybe the people in New York City in 2025. You need to be able to accept the change and to move with it. Because nothing stays forever. Even November rain. Nothing lasts forever. And that kind of sensitivity to things that pass away would express that understanding. Beauty could be found in the now, in something that is temporary, in a flower that blooms and then dies, in a cloud that passes by. Because you could learn from that nothing would last forever. When you are trying to hold things for the foreverness, you're wasting your resources and you're bound to be disappointed. The only thing that is forever is this constant change of moments. That's the only thing that is forever. And of course, God, well, that's a different case altogether. So, we always going to daven Arvit now. So if we're going to look at this way, death is not a mistake in creation or some kind of a defect in creation. It's a part of it. It's an offer, an invitation to remember the essence of life, our ability to rejuvenate. That's why Chazal told us, it's better to go to the house of a mourner than to a party. Why? Because it helps you remember to rejuvenate. It teaches this all the time. The flower does not hold on or tries to hold on to the petals that fall over me, nor is the tree. When the tree loses its leaves, it allows new leaves to come out. And the same thing for us. When you live in an awareness of tranquility, of deep called meditation, prayer, and love, you could actually slow down the process of death. And that is the ability to rejuvenate, as we had with Avraham and Sarah when Sarah died. He did even more after she died. Not because now she held them back or something like this. Because he says, because there was a great loss and I need to rejuvenate. So he did even more and more and more. There is a loss. You could fall in love again. You could dream again. Even if your dream fell apart, you could dream again. You could bring the light, even when it seems that the light was turned off. You could turn it back on. How are you going to do so? With love, with emunah, with belief. When we want to touch eternity, right? You reach the level of a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a person that falls 7 times and still gets up. He doesn't give up. That's a level that because once you get up, where is God? God is near you and is exactly where you left him. He's waiting for you to come and pick it up. Now, and why do they call tzaddikim in their death are still called chayim? It's not because they live forever, but rather because they learned how to live life, how to be alive also in their death. In their death, they commanded us life, as they say. And of course, that's the story or the secret that we spoke about when we learn Parashat Chayei Sarah. When the body forgets When the body slows down, the spirit elevates, continues. Just like the smell of the earth after the rain. Just like the echo of music that stay in the air. The music doesn't end. Those voices continue forever. That's why it's important to learn and to say only good things. Because when you speak, that voice, that energy continues all the way out to the end of the universe. And you could shape the world by your attitude. If you're going to be good, feel good, and do good, and also only speak. That's why the Torah was so much big against Lashon Hara. Regardless of what the person did to you. Because with your words, you are affecting the world. You're affecting everything around you. You're affecting the universe. And maybe the bad thing that happens in the world is because we love gossip. And we should stop with this. In the quiet afterlife, that's where eternity dwells. So, Rabotai, let's connect ourselves back to life. Let's try to stop being afraid. Let the light fill our vessels. Let the light of God fill our life. Let's put meaning in it. Let's learn how to do it. Let's be united for the love of God.
If you ask me,